Q&A cuties, welcome back to the Q&A podcast. We're your hosts. I'm Kevin.
And I'm Mel.
And on today's episode, we will be talking about religion and how it was for both of us to experience what it was like growing up Catholic as queer individuals. So, Mel, did you want to get us started?
Yeah, for sure. So, as you said, I grew up Catholic, Roman Catholic sector. I don't know, like, all the different categories, but yeah, Roman Catholic. And yeah, I was raised Catholic since I was out the womb, blessed, all the sacrament. Is there a birth sacrament? Or is the first one First Communion?
I think First
I'm
Communion.
not sure. Okay, cool. Well, yeah, so, I don't know, what is it? Baptism. Oh my God! Wow, what a great beginning.
So you just agreed with me, though.
Birth? What's the birth sacrament? I don't know. Anyway, so baptism, that's what it's called. And yeah, so I got my first communion at around seven-ish, and then confirmed up until now. And yeah, that's like basically my rundown with religion. What about you?
Well, were you baptized like as a baby, or how young?
Yeah.
Do you even remember it?
I don't. I think I was like a month. I'm just kidding. No.
For me, I think so. I was baptized at it was weird because my sister and brother were both baptized as babies, and we'd have like these pictures of them. But for me, I was like a grown child, so I was like 5 years old, and they were just holding me up.
It's like submerged.
So yeah, I also grew up in a Roman Catholic family and baptized around age 5, and attended actually private Catholic education my whole life, essentially, until college. So yeah, it's a big part of my life, whether I like it or not.
Yeah, I personally know only a few folks that were baptized after, they've grown into a child. But yeah, it's super interesting. Was there like a reason why they decided to do it later?
I honestly don't know, because like with after 2 children, you kind of expect them to just, as a baby, but maybe they just didn't have time.
They were busy. They had an appointment.
They had, they couldn't get an appointment until a couple of years later.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Yeah. It's like Din Tai Fung.
The church, the church was booked, but I don't know. I guess I never really asked. How was it growing up? I guess like going through that process of first baptism and then like going to First Communion and all the other sacraments, and how was that for you?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked, because I feel like I've gone through so much with the sacraments throughout my life. One of my first, I guess, more memorable ones was First Communion, and I don't know if it works like this for most young Catholics, but my First Communion, in order to receive the sacrament, we had to get tested on prayers, on general processes within the church, and just our knowledge of the Bible, kind of. It wasn't like too in-depth, but the prayers, I would say, were the hardest ones for me, at least. We basically had to recite, all the core prayers that they wanted us to know at that age. And yeah, I remember not being able to remember them at the time when I had to take the test. And the proctor was also kind of the sacrament program director for the whole church. And I remember, failing, essentially. She was saying that I didn't know the prayers to her, like up to her standard, because I would stutter or maybe I would mess up a line or two, and she was like, listen, I'm going to fail you. We'll give you like a month to, try again. And yeah, good luck. Hopefully you get it next time. And I remember it being pretty shocking to me because as a kid, I grew up, within the school system. I felt like I was doing well, right? And, teachers would tell me I'm doing well. And I thought I was a good student, but in the realm of church, I wasn't. And so it's like super crazy. And I think there is this kind of whole like, tiger parents within the Asian community, but that intersection of tiger parents who also want you to do well in church, because that's like a whole another realm, right? It's like you have tiger parents that want you to know like basic, or not basic, but general education things. But then there's also that same parent that wants you to know all of this theology and prayers and whatnot. And yeah, I remember something I had to deal with at 7. What about you for First Communion? How was your experience?
It's hard to say, because I break down my Catholicism into grades because that's how I remember it. So like I remember when we were in school, it was like, okay, in 2nd grade you get First Communion, and then like later on you get confirmation in like 7th, 8th grade. So I just remember like in 2nd grade, people were like, oh, like this is the year you're getting First Communion. The way you had tests and like lessons about this, it was like, because obviously we had to take religion classes in a Catholic school. And so I guess that was considered, those tests, which I never thought about because that was just a class to me, but it was just part of the curriculum. It was, I mean, yeah, there wasn't anything super extravagant about it. Everything really throughout each sacrament just felt it felt like a process, you know. It's something you just had to do. It's like when you're applying to college, like, oh, you have to take the SAT. It's just something that's part of as you go through K through 12 for me. There was never, when you're talking about, like, oh, this proctor might fail me or might not let me move forward. I don't know how that would apply. Like if a student was, let's say, failing their religion exams or failing their religion tests, not knowing their prayers or anything, because I've never run into someone like that, so I don't know how that would apply in my experience. If I was the one that didn't know the Hail Mary or the Our Father like by heart, how would they apply that, or how would they address that, especially at a Catholic school? And would they let you move forward with the sacrament? So I don't know about that one, but
yeah. So at your school, you say it was a little bit more integrated within the curriculum to know prayers, right? Is that?
I guess maybe that's why it never happened in my experience, because every morning we would say a different prayer. So it'd be like, oh, like we're gonna start with the Our Father or like the Hail Mary or just anything. And like before every meal, we would always say the blessing for the food, and we would just like, I guess it was like really integrated on everything. So it almost felt natural for everyone to move forward with each sacrament. Yeah.
Yeah. So would you say there was more trust in those students?
Probably.
That they would know just passively?
I think, yeah, because it's just something that you learn along the way. And because it's so repetitive, you just go along with it. And it's just, the teachers are also, almost everyone, if not everyone, was also Catholic there as well. So, they kind of make sure you're along this path, that you know your stuff and know what the religion is about.
Yeah, I can literally tell you what prayers I needed to know, and let me know. Like, tell me right now if you needed to know these. So there were the "Forgive me for all my sins, for I have sinned against you, and I should love you above all." Did you have to know that one?
That one, okay, but that was for like, what's that when you go to like the
Confession.
priest? Confession, yeah. Sorry, I'm so sorry.
No way.
What is
That
that? What is that
one
one? Yeah.
where you tell the priest all your secrets except that you're queer, because if you told him, he would literally excommunicate you. Yeah, that one. That
Like,
one.
no prayer will help you with that.
Yeah,
But
like
yeah, no,
you're. Yeah.
I remember like they would always tell us like before you sit down or before you go in, remember you have to say, "Forgive me, Father, for I have sinned," and then you'd say, "It has been blank years or months since my last confession." At least that's how we did it. And like you would just say, you would tell them, and sometimes they would question you, like, "Well, why was your confession or last confession 6 months ago?" And you just kind of sit there,
Yeah.
you're like, uh,
Listen, I got fifth grade to do. We
some
got a lot
math
of tests going
homework.
on. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
I
yeah,
got, my friends to talk to and whatnot. It's that, oh, like that. No, you reminded me because, before I guess we started recording this episode, I had some sacraments to kind of, I definitely wanted to bring them up. But confession was not one that I remembered. And honestly, I think it's because I suppressed it. Like it was such a crazy experience for me, especially my first one, because I it was the first time that I would be kind of having a one-on-one with an adult I don't know, and it's a person that apparently can help me, determine my afterlife, you know, kind of casual things that a fifth grader, would go through. Oh, you're going to go talk to this ordained, like, spiritual guide, and you tell him all your secrets, and then he'll be the judge if, you go to heaven or not. Oh, cool, thanks. And then I got math homework after that. Like, yeah, casual childhood. Um, anyway, so my first time, I remember in the back of my head because, personally, I knew that I was forever. And so I remember going in and I was like, do I say it? Like, should I? And it was terrifying because I was like, I mean, God already knows, so like, do I need to say it? But then I'm like, is it bad if I don't? You know, I came in with such a dilemma already, kind of, and obviously I didn't. When I did have my first one, I was like, I'm not gonna do it. I don't think this is the right time. I'm literally small.
so I guess based on like all this confession, and at the time when you were at that age, did you know or were you aware of like conversion therapy and what that was?
I probably heard stories of folks going through that, especially. I mean, I'm not old, but like I definitely heard about it as a kid when it was still a topic people, because definitely in this year people do not talk about it, and if they do, it's like a taboo, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
we don't do that anymore. But I remember as a kid, I would hear about it, and I was like, that can't be real. Like that does not work. I don't think that would ever work. And personally, I never saw myself being fixable through that method. Fixable.
Mm-hmm.
Because I thought it was a problem as a kid, right? So yeah, going into that confession, I wasn't scared that they would like refer me to like conversion, because I don't even know if my church offered that, if anything. But yeah, that wasn't a fear of mine. What about you? Did you hear about it as a kid?
So I was trying to think of, I guess, like applying your experience and like how it compared to mine. were you familiar and like, did you regularly converse with the priests that you would see at confession? Like, because you would go to mass, right? And so, like, that was that priest. Okay, yeah.
It
So,
is the mass priest.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
And I was trying to think, because for us, like, my home church was also obviously like my school, and the priests would just regularly walk around the campus, and like we would see them. So it didn't feel weird in that they were like a stranger, I guess, but it felt weird going into that confession because then it's like you have to see them later on. And I know like you're not, obviously they're not supposed to say anything regarding, because it's like a confidential confession, but it felt scary to like tell them, like you said, your secrets, and then like later on you just see them like, oh hey, and like, yeah, I just told you, my deepest darkest secrets, but how's your day, the next day or something like that.
Yeah,
um
yeah.
I actually never had the experience or fear of confessing certain things about who I was, because I didn't really feel, I don't know if it's not the way I remember it, but at least I don't recall having or feeling the need to say that as a confession. Um, and maybe that's just me telling myself that, but that never came to my mind, at least early on. Maybe it did down the line. And then the idea, I was definitely aware of like conversion therapy, but it never occurred to me either of that might be something that they would refer me to, because I don't know where that happens. I don't know if it happens, at the church, like in our county, stuff like that. So yeah, it wasn't something that really occurred to me.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's super interesting. And I do believe that I have this feeling in my head that, or this idea in my head that churches all offer it. Like, I don't know, maybe that's just my paranoia, but I mean, they
Like
say
in the
that it's
back,
not. Yeah, like it's in the back, right next to the bathroom, that creepy hallway with
There's
like,
always a creepy dark
there's
alley,
always a
like
creepy hallway.
in the
Mm-hmm.
bathroom in the back of the church. It's
Yeah,
dark,
that's where it
cold.
happens. Yeah,
Yeah, probably.
there's an electric chair and everything. It's crazy. Yeah. Um. So that what you just mentioned about seeing your priest around school made me wanna, I guess, explore that experience of having your priest walk around school, seeing your friends, knowing your friends and who you hang out with. And then me personally, when I grew up, I always had this kind of assumption that my teachers and my parents talk. Like, obviously, most of the time, and obviously, growing up, I'm learning that parents and teachers only talk during parent teacher conferences. But in my head, I always just kind of had this thing where teachers will call my parents if they have anything to say about me. Like, there's just this relationship. And it's definitely stems from my own paranoia that I grew up with, and like having like high levels of anxiety. But I wonder how that affects you as a student, where not only are your, there's a chance that your teachers and your parents kind of talk, and they do have that chance to talk at parent teacher conferences, but also a priest and your parents having that same relationship, and then the church at large and your parents having that relationship. Because I assume your parents put you, in a Catholic school to make sure you grow up Catholic. So, do you think there was a kind of communication that they had between each other?
I never thought of that. And I don't know if it's because the way my parents are with either like
Mm-hmm.
teachers or priests, because they are very reserved compared to other parents, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
But also, I feel like there was still this trust I had with the priest, even though, there's still that fear, but I feel like there was still an established trust with them, knowing that it's also on their conscience that, they're not supposed to say anything. So if they did, that's also on them. So there was always never that fear that they might say something to my parents. But I also feel like during confession, I would either tone things down or just not say it at all, because there was that fear of being judged. So there's,
yeah,
yeah.
It's crazy. I mean, on that note of toning things down during confession, I definitely remember saying, so there's this crush that I have maybe, impure thoughts about, but we don't need to talk about what they look like or, what their gender is and whatnot. But yeah, I definitely had to filter what I said. And again, just another instance of these young kids literally having to censor themselves. And not only that, but we're put into these situations where we need to kind of think and then overthink about what we're saying when it didn't need to happen. Like, why? Why are we there having to confess? And I get it. It's a sacrament and it, in fact, can help people. But I think there is, if there's a need for it, then it will be necessary. But as a kid, when I was figuring myself out, just trying to get through school and trying to make friends, I don't think I personally needed that time to confess my sins. Because I, didn't even know what was wrong and what was right still. So who am I to be like, oh, listen, I was a bad person last week. Like, huh? I'm a kid. Leave me alone. Like, what? But yeah.
Did you ever feel, though, that, like, confession after they'd be like, oh, go say, like, 10 Hail Marys and 2 Our Fathers and stuff like that? Do you ever
great.
feel like...
like, thank you.
Yeah.
Amazing. Yeah. Heaven, here I come. Open up the gates. I'm ready. Like, what?
But
it's done.
Did it ever feel like a weight was lifted off your shoulders, or did you ever feel like it helped, like, afterwards?
Okay, so I love this question because the answer is a hard no. I felt like even more stressed out because growing up, and this was like a personal thing, like I never confided in anyone. I only had myself because I knew that I was different from the beginning. And so when I was put in the situation to be forced to confide in someone, which was the priest, I didn't feel like it was a safe space. And so I left feeling like, bruh, someone knows my secrets. Like, even though it wasn't my main, my big secret, like I still felt like, oh gosh, like, did I say too much? Or like, is he going to tell my parents because he knows the program director and the program director knows my parents? Like, gosh, now I'm screwed. So it just never left me feeling relieved. And I think I got to a certain point later on when I, explored my own ways of having a religion that it doesn't need to involve all these specific people that we were told it needs to involve. And that's when I learned that, like, my religion is my religion. My relationship with God is my own relationship. And yeah, that helped me get more relief. But for you, were you relieved after letting out,
From what I remember, yes. And I don't know if it's because of, like, the things I would say, like, oh, I stole a pencil, versus, bigger things. Or like, oh, I was mean to my sister, stuff like that.
I borrowed my classmate's eraser and I didn't give it
and
back.
I didn't return it.
I kept it. It was
still with me right now.
It was a smelly one, the grape one. I never gave it back.
It just smelled so good.
I promise I'll give it back tomorrow. I promise. No, yeah.
But yeah, stuff like, I feel like that's the stuff I would say. And it was never like the heavy, maybe compared to you, like the heavy, deeper stuff that you felt the need to say. So maybe that's why I felt a sense of relief, like now I've learned and like I can be nicer to my sister. Maybe I'll return the eraser. Stuff like that.
Yeah. Okay. No, I totally get what you mean, because there were, you know, a lot of those kind of, in my opinion, like fluff kind of sins that I would use to fill the time. But, well, I mean, this also goes into the timeline of my sacraments, where I was like in middle school, I think, for my first, or no, it had to be in elementary. I guess late elementary, but I felt like, you know, these people, you know, the CCD teachers, the program director, they're all telling me, this is your chance to tell the priest anything you need to tell him so that you can get into heaven. And obviously, me growing up as like a devout Catholic, I didn't take that lightly. And so I would say the fluff things, but I'm also like, there were also times during the confession where the priest is like, is that all of it? And I'm like, okay, fine. I'll say it. You know, like, oh, you got me. Like, you know, I got in a fight with my sister. Like, you got me. Damn, was it obvious? Like, yeah. So that's why I felt like there was this pressure that I needed to break down my barriers that were obviously there in place for my own self-defense. And it felt, you know, invasive. That's definitely, and that's how I still view a lot of things in the institution. Invasive. At a young age.
I think that word can describe a lot, at least how I felt as well, because it almost felt forced, I guess, because, you know, it's like, so our confessions would happen during school, like school hours, and we would just like go to the church and have confessions. So it was like, you can't just say no. But yeah, I guess that, because you brought up the idea of like how the relationship you have with religion now is a different perspective, and also like, I guess, moving on to confirmation and everything with that, because I always consider now, looking back, that confirmation it occurs at such a young age, at least for those in a Catholic, private Catholic education, because it follows this timeline, and it's like junior high, 7th, 8th grade, when you're ages 10 to 12, 11, 12. Do you feel like that is the right and appropriate age? Like, at that age, did you feel that you were ready to say yes to Catholicism?
No, not at all. I was literally small. Yeah. Yeah. It was such a crazy, and I think the sheer fact that I didn't understand what this whole confirmation process was until I was confirmed speaks to how unready I was, because I was doing the whole process because my parents told me, oh, you know, you're a sophomore in high school now, you need to get confirmed. And I'm like, oh, great, you know, another sacrament, haven't done one of those in about like 10 years, right? So sure, you know, and I'm in high school thinking about college already. So I'm like, okay, fine, I'll just get this thing done and over with. I mean, okay, that's not totally true, because I was kind of involved with the church and I was down to get it at the time. But that doesn't diminish the fact that it was still such a young age at which to ask someone, do you want to devote the rest of your life to this religion? And I didn't understand that that's what the sacrament was until way later, like after the thing. And I think my first kind of indicator that, you know, this is a very serious sacrament, this is something you should really sit on and think about, was when the program director, same director that failed me the first time for First Communion, say kind of a similar process for confirmation, you know, prayer tests, but also with the added requirements of going to like retreats and whatnot, and a few years of like experience within youth group and stuff. were a few of the requirements. She told me she was saying that she didn't think I was ready at the time. Not because the prayers, because I had that shit locked. You know, I remember 10 years ago, fuck, like I failed the prayer test, so I'm going to make sure I do well the first time. I did that. But she goes, I've known you for a quite some time now. I've known you since you're a kid. I just want to make sure that you're ready for this sacrament, because it is basically you agreeing to follow God for the rest of your life. And I was like, whoa, like, whoa, this is not what my parents described. They said when they were in high school, they just took, did a few prayers, talked to the bishop, in the Philippines, and then they're done. Like they're an official Catholic recognized by the religion and whatnot. And yeah, I was stopped in my tracks, literally. I was second guessing everything, wondering, oh damn, like this is like an adult thing, and I'm still small, and I don't know. I honestly, at that point, I understood her second guessing, because obviously, me knowing for so long and me assuming that she knew, that was me second guessing, was assuming that she knew I was. So it was just me submitting and being like, damn, do I just become straight, or do I just become more straight passing? What do I do so that I can get this sacrament, so that no one, suspects me of anything and whatnot? And then it made me question my own relationship with God. I'm like, do I want to do this? Is it worth it? And yeah, so definitely sophomore year, that's when I had to do it. Way too young, still figuring myself out. So what about you? How old were you?
So I was actually younger. I think. I remember it being in 7th and 8th grade, and that I never had that experience of, that person saying, because we did have like teachers and we get split off into groups, but there was never that occurrence of someone saying, you might not be ready, or question us, are you ready for this? Because it was more of like, you've already had 6-7 years of Catholic education, and the whole thing, there were other students also from like other schools, including like public schools and in the area. So it wasn't just students from my school, but because they're part of this and part of the church, they still had that assumption of, they're ready for this. We just have to go through these lessons and complete like prayers and like scripture readings and stuff like that. So I definitely do think it was a very young age, though. Obviously, like you said, at the time, I wasn't aware either of what confirmation truly was. It was more of, this is just another sacrament that we're fulfilling through the process. It was nothing really I was aware of. But I mean, I'm trying to think of like, at what age do you think it's proper to go forward with confirmation? Because I always think about in college, a lot of the people and friends that I had from Catholic school almost fell off of religion and didn't have that as a part of their life. So is it just the Catholic Church knowing that, and they want to have confirmation at an early age where children just aren't super aware of, what else is out there, what other religions may exist, and also what else they might be exposed to. And they try to get them early on, which sounds messed up. But yeah, I don't know what age is appropriate after that.
Yeah, no, that is such a good question, because one thing that I would always notice was when I was in high school and I would do youth group and I also did the worship team and whatnot. So as an observer of parishioners, right, I'm looking at all these people in the church, all the people who come in who are new, all of my friends who came in with me as kids. And I always noticed that the new parishioners that were at least 20, maybe 30, 40s, the ones that converted into Catholicism later on were the strongest, most outspoken ones, and they're visibly more passionate
Mm-hmm.
because they found it later on, right? And that goes into the whole, psychology of when you're forced to do something, you later on find freedom and defer from it, right? Whereas these folks are deferring from something else and found freedom in Catholicism. And at that point, it makes more sense to just try to find converts, like try to find those folks who are converting from a non-Catholic background, because chances are they're going to feel more passionate about it because they found it in adulthood when they needed it. Whereas I'm not saying that kids don't need religion, but I mean, this is a far reach, but I'm pretty sure religion was made by adults. Like, no kid came out the womb and was like, okay, time, to pray.
Praise God.
Like, it was created by adults because, it was a way to make sense of the world. That's the idea of religion. And the fact that we're not giving kids the chance to find religion on their own and find the necessity for it, because it's not a necessity if you're forced into it. It's not a necessity. All you need are your fruit snacks and your Capri Suns as a kid, right? That's all I needed, But yeah, so that just, again, causes that whole, what's the opposite of like attraction? Like, like whatever that is.
Repulsion? I don't know if that's the...
Yes, repulsion. No, okay, repulsion is pretty harsh, but like, yeah, that kind of desire to leave is more common, I feel like, when you're forced to do it as a kid. So, yeah, did you notice that? Like, you went to church, you saw parishioners of all ages. Did you ever see those folks who were getting confirmed or getting baptized as adults? Like, did you see those folks?
There were students, and I always thought this was cool, where I forgot what the process is called, but you would get the 3 sacraments at once. Because if they're converting to Catholicism in like 5th or 6th grade, you would have your baptism, your first communion, and confirmation all at the same time. And I always thought that was a cool process. I was like, how come, I had to go 2nd grade, and then I guess like you have to go through all these years of these sacraments. And then I feel like that sounds very selfish, and I don't mean it in that way, but as a kid, you're kind of like this person just had 3 sacraments in a couple months. And then like I would question, how come I can't get confirmed right now? But there were, I don't know how that affects their devotion to the religion, if it is stronger or not as strong, having all 3 at once, like, because you are older. But yeah, I don't really notice. I do notice though that a lot of the people I'm still in contact with, like the friends that I know, don't really, I don't know if it's a generational thing, but we don't go to mass as often, especially after like after COVID. I have not gone to mass because of safety issues, and then it just kind of fell out. But I don't know a lot of people who still go to mass, or I don't have friends that practice religion, go to practice the sacraments, go to confession and stuff like that. Because you're kind of, especially being, like you said, I think of you're being freed after. going, and after high school, a lot of us we were stuck in this bubble of Catholicism and the rules and the scripture. So afterwards, the whole like stereotype of like private Catholic kids are crazy. Because you're kind of like just let go and don't have, it's as if someone's watching you anymore. You don't have someone to judge you. So afterwards, you go to college and you kind of just get to do what you want, I guess.
Yeah.
So when you aren't being watched, or after you're not in high school anymore and you go to a college that is a secular like university, you get to experience unhinged behavior and be a part of it. And that makes sense, because then all of a sudden you realize that what you grew up doing wasn't completely normal, and you just wanted to explore and do what you want to do and have fun. I don't know how many other details, but like, do you personally know individuals who, I guess, grew up in a Catholic education and then completely switched, I guess, from your perspective?
I just know a few folks. I mean, I've told you, I'm not gonna not gonna go into specifics, but yeah, fully dox them. No, but it's just in general, the people who I have come across that have gone through Catholic education and then eventually left, and not only left but also explored literally every other thing that they couldn't explore in high school. There's a trend, and it hasn't failed me yet. I have a theory, and it hasn't been proven wrong so far. You first of all, on the crazier spectrum of folks that I know, or on the crazier side of the spectrum. Yeah, raves, events, concerts, parties, you name it. What kind of was your, I guess we could get into more recent times, but what was your kind of moment of realization that, whoa, I'm not in Catholic school anymore, let me live my life? What was that for you, and what was it like?
I feel like some of that behavior and perspective changed definitely in high school, but it wasn't fully realized until college, especially like freshman, sophomore year. You're completely exposed, especially not only leaving the bubble of, Catholic education, but Orange County itself, moving to, San Diego and seeing a completely different culture, and almost demographic at university. So it's like a whole new experience, and a lot of different of other people's experiences, and learning from that. And so that's when I was like, this is the world. Like, this is like what is real, not what I grew up learning.
You left the simulation, like you broke out of it. You got to the edge of the domain, and you're like, holy fuck, where am I? I made it.
It's a whole new world and experience. And I'm so glad that, I got to actually leave and kind of experience that, because it definitely plays into who you grow into as an individual, the opinions you have, the perspectives you have, the behaviors you present, and everything like that. Yeah, it was, and I mean, this applies to even some of my friends that I know today, and it's just weird to see how different people are in high school to now, just from a year or two outside of that bubble, because you get to actually see what their personality was meant to be.
Yes.
So,
for sure. I totally agree with that. I didn't go to Catholic school, but I grew up Catholic, and going to college not only liberalized me socially and intellectually, but also spiritually, 100%. I felt more in tune with who I was when I left. And I think that probably isn't an exclusive experience to folks with religion, but I think, obviously leaving home, going to college, it's going to liberalize you in every way. Hopefully it does. Because, hope if you carried whatever mentality you had from before moving out and before going to college into college, that I don't think college did its job then. I don't think it was worth it, because I think the value of being able to experience that, and not only learning real stuff, like, whatever you're studying in college, but also learning life outside of your own bubble is crazy. And it's super valuable. I do want to kind of rein in on and kind of contextualize things within our own Asian experiences as well, with this kind of idea of moving out and experiencing new things, because not only were we queer Catholics, but also queer Asian Catholics, right? And they're, like I said earlier, the whole tiger parent idea, there's like Asian parents is the stereotype that they are harder academically, but I think there's something to be said about being Asian and Catholic that kind of doubles down on the kid, on the child. I feel like there's, not only do you have to be good at school, good at making friends and good to your teachers, but also be good to your priest, have all these sacraments, study prayers, and all of that, layers of discipline, right? And then breaking out into the real world and going crazy. So do you think there is something about Asian, I guess, religion folks that can create the higher potential of going, popping off in college and branching out?
Definitely.
Yeah.
I mean, even you brought it up, the idea of raves, and I mean, we'll go into that.
Oh, no, is like, I think exhibit A out of 1,000 exhibits, where it's these Asian Christians that I meet at raves, and I'm like, yo, you went to that retreat too? Like, I was there the same year. Literally, you were there when that happened. I met someone at an event, literally, and they went to the same retreats as me. And if you asked me at that retreat that I went in that year, oh, are you ever going to go to raves? Are you ever going to drink? I'd be like, no, I would never. Like, what is that? And then here we were at that event, and we're like, yeah, like, it's crazy 180, right?
Yeah. And it's the whole, it applies the same way, because growing up Asian, you're being watched. You have, like, almost Big Brother watching you. Obviously, same thing, Tiger Mom. And it's, once you kind of get to experience, living on your own and doing your own thing, you don't have to worry about that anymore.
Yeah, I want to just, reiterate the idea that there's multiple levels of kind of, as you said, being watched, not only on the Asian academic level, but also on the Catholic Christian level, and then also on the don't be gay level. It's like, whoa, like, and then once you leave and you get that chance to not be watched, not get asked where you are, not, just all those things that would happen when you still lived in your parents' home, crazy. Me personally, I I definitely let loose in the like first few years, and then I got tired. My old joints can't handle going to all these festivals. I say that, but but I'm still gonna go. And yeah, no, it was so interesting. I definitely internalized that moment when I found a friend that went to the same retreat as me, and we saw each other at that event. Like the odds of me,
especially running into each other.
Yeah, it's crazy. So yeah, there's definitely a pipeline of, oh, you went to this big Catholic retreat? Yeah, you'll be at Beyond Wonderland in a few years for sure. Yeah. And then I guess this will be more of a rave topic thing, but there is something spiritual about raves, and I think there's a connection that can be made between the spiritual vibes you get from like a church and also at an event. It's not the same, obviously. It's different, but the sense of community and the sense of awe of like, oh my gosh, like I can feel the energy of everyone here. Same thing in a church.
Yeah.
Same thing, because we're all doing the same stuff. It's like it's a form of community.
Because you're there for a reason. Yeah.
Yeah.
And like the different stages, like you went to see that artist. So everyone there is there for the same reason.
Same reason.
Same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. I personally do worship some EDM artists. Yeah, I think yeah. I have a few playlists with like Hillsong, right? Hillsong United, and then
remixes,
the next song is, but the EDM remix, right? Yeah, like wow, crazy.
I guess going to end, kind of like wrap things up for like religion growing up and how that played a role in who you are now. How you kind of touched on it earlier, but how do you feel it is relevant in your life now, or how it has changed?
For sure. I will keep it short and sweet, because in my head, my relationship with God is not short and sweet, but it is easy to simplify now, because I've matured enough to simplify it for myself. And it is that my own relationship with God is not affected, like I said before, by any other person or any institution, because I'm grateful, although it caused me so much stress that a young kid shouldn't never, have had to deal with. I am grateful that it introduced me to having that opportunity to have a relationship with God. And that's what I stuck with now. I don't go to physical church as often, but I want to say that my relationship with God is strong, if not stronger, because I'm not forced, to have this relationship. And that's how I would describe.
I completely agree. The same way, because we frame it in a way that we want that relationship to be, and that perspective of, this is what I want and need at this moment. And I can't say that my relationship at this time is as strong as it was before, just because it was like really, really strong growing up, just because of how the education I received. But I am slowly trying to work on it and reframe it in that way that works for me.
I would like to ask you, though, why do you see your past relationship as stronger? Because what defines a strong relationship for you?
That is very true. I think it's just maybe perspective again of I was so involved of like, because we had the campus ministry club, I volunteered, I did vacation Bible school, and that relationship was different because, obviously the lessons we've learned to this point now, but I feel like I still just barely started practicing like my religion and doing prayers again, I guess. And it doesn't feel like I'm at the place where I was before, even though I was a different person then. And I kind of want that established relationship from the past, but with this new mindset, if that makes sense.
For sure.
And I agree though that what you said of like going to mass. I haven't been to mass in a long time, but I do feel comfortable going back and would feel comfortable going back now, walking in with this new mindset.
Mm-hmm. So you would say that for yourself, that stronger, a stronger relationship with a higher power is reinforced by those routines and those, keeping up knowledge about, the Bible, sacraments, all of that. Would you say it's reinforced? Because you say that.
It depends on the person.
Mm-hmm.
I don't necessarily think like I have to sit down and like read the Bible and read scripture to reinforce that relationship. For me, it's just having those prayers and conversations on a regular basis. For me, it's like that's what reinforces it. Almost like when we have conversations, like every time we converse and like have just like talk to each other, you kind of establish more connections and more of a relationship. So to me, praying is what reinforces, and I haven't been doing that as often as I think I could be. And it just depends on where I am in life and what I want from my relationship, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that is literally the key point. I think I would like to emphasize is that it is up to you. Mm-hmm. Like point blank period, it is up to you. That's how I would like to view the idea of religion and your relationship with a higher power, is that it is up to you. Whatever works for you. And yeah, I think institutionalized religion is a thing that can exist separately from your own religion and your own way of seeing a higher power and whatnot.
Yeah. I guess before we give our ending remarks, I think I just want to say that, anything that we brought up, I am super grateful for, the Catholic education I received and everything that I learned growing up, albeit, all of the things that may have caused trauma, may have caused all of the, questioning and everything like that. But everyone that I've encountered, I feel like still plays a role in who I became today and who I am today, regardless of what happened. Catholicism did set a foundation for me to later understand down the line all of the things I've learned, if that makes sense. That's how I feel and view my upbringing. And I don't, I guess, have regrets about it or hate anyone or anything because of it. Yeah.
I totally agree. Yeah. I as well don't regret anything, don't hate anyone. It made me stronger. It made me smarter about who I confide in and who I can see as a safe space for myself. And in the end, out of all of my, I guess, Catholic education in my youth, it allowed me to experience that side and learn what I wanted to take away from it. And, and what I did take away from it was several ways of coping, talking to God, praying, all of that. And that's what I feel like I need, at the moment. And if I do end up feeling like I would like to return, then so be it.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think super subjective, like what you want and what you need is up to you for sure.
Yeah, so at this point in the podcast, we would typically have our Q&A session where we would address any questions, comments, concerns, or suggestions that you might want us to talk about in the podcast. You can submit any of these submissions either through the link in our bio or at bit.ly/theQAsubs. So be sure to submit anything that you'd like us to talk about, and we'll just choose a select few for each episode and then get back to you.
Yeah, literally ask us anything. Like, we will answer it, except our home addresses and social securities. But besides that, ask away. Yeah. We love questions. It do be the Q&A, so.
Mm-hmm.
But on that note, thank you all for listening. We hope you had a blast listening to us, and we will hopefully be back soon. Hopefully we see you there. And yeah, thank y'all.
Thanks,
Bye,
everyone.
Q&A cuties.
Bye.